The snow fell in thick, unrelenting sheets, blanketing the forest in a silence so profound it felt as though the world itself had been muffled. The wind howled through the trees, carrying with it a biting cold that gnawed at exposed skin and seeped through layers of clothing. It was a night for staying indoors, for huddling by the fire and waiting out the storm. But out here, in the frozen wilderness, there was no fire, no shelter, no warmth, and yet she walked. Her footsteps were slow, unsteady, each one a struggle against the deep snow that clung to her legs. Her breath came in ragged gasps, visible in the frigid air, and her thin coat did little to protect her from the cold. Her dark hair was matted with snow, her cheeks flushed red from the wind, and her eyes, wide and desperate, scanned the trees ahead as though searching for something, anything that might save her. She didn't know how long she had been walking. Hours, perhaps. Time had lost all meaning in the endless white void. Her fingers were numb, her toes long past the point of feeling, and her body trembled violently with every step. But she couldn't stop. She stopped, she would die. She knew that much. The forest seemed to stretch on forever, an unbroken expanse of snow and shadow. The trees loomed overhead, their branches heavy with ice, and the only sound was the crunch of her boots in the snow and the occasional groan of the wind. She was alone, utterly, completely alone. And then she saw it. Light. At first, she thought it was a trick of her mind, a desperate hallucination born of exhaustion and cold. But no, there it was again, flickering faintly through the trees. A warm, golden glow that stood out starkly against the endless white. Her heart leapt in her chest, and she forced her legs to move faster, stumbling through the snow toward the light. As she drew closer, the shape of a cabin emerged from the darkness. It was small, barely more than a single room, but it was solid and sturdy, with smoke curling from the chimney and light spilling from the windows. She could see the faint outline of a figure moving inside, and the sight filled her with a desperate hope. She reached the door and raised a trembling hand to knock, her fingers so stiff she could barely curl them into a fist. The sound was faint, barely audible over the wind, but it was enough. The figure inside paused, then moved toward the door. It opened, and she found herself staring up at a man. He was tall, with broad shoulders and a face that was both stern and kind. His eyes widened in surprise as he took in her disheveled appearance, the snow clinging to her clothes, the way her body shook with cold. For a moment, neither of them spoke. And then she whispered, her voice barely audible over the wind. I have nowhere else to go." The man hesitated, his gaze flickering over her face, and then he stepped aside. "Come in," he said, his voice low and steady, "before you freeze to death." She stumbled across the threshold, her legs giving out the moment she was inside. He caught her before she could fall, his hands firm but gentle as he guided her to a chair by the fire. She sank into it gratefully, her body trembling violently as the warmth of the flames began to seep into her skin. The man moved quickly, fetching a thick blanket and draping it over her shoulders. He knelt in front of her, his eyes searching hers. "What's your name?" he asked. "Lena," she whispered, her voice hoarse. "Lena," he repeated, as though testing the sound of it. "I'm Elias. Can you tell me what happened? How did you end up out there?" She shook her head, tears welling in her eyes. I don't know. I was running. Had to get away. I didn't mean to come here, I didn't know where else to go." Elias studied her for a moment, his expression unreadable. Then he nodded, as though he had made a decision. "You're safe here," he said. "For now, that's all that matters." He stood and moved to the small kitchen area, filling a pot with water and setting it on the stove. Lena watched him through bleary eyes, her mind struggling to process what was happening. She was safe. For the first time in what felt like forever, she was safe. Elias returned with a cup of tea, pressing it into her hands. "Drink this," he said. "It'll help warm you up." She obeyed, the hot liquid soothing her throat and spreading warmth through her chest. She hadn't realized how cold she had been until now, how close she had come to the edge. She sipped the tea slowly, her body gradually relaxing as the heat of the fire and the blanket worked their magic. Elias sat across from her, his eyes never leaving her face. "You don't have to tell me anything," he said. "Not until you're ready. But if you're in trouble, I want to help." Lena looked at him, her heart aching with gratitude. She didn't know this man, didn't know why he was out here alone in the middle of nowhere. But he had saved her life. And for that, she owed him the truth. "I was running from someone," she said, her voice trembling. "Someone dangerous. He hurt me. And I couldn't stay. I couldn't let him find me again." Elias's expression darkened, a flicker of anger passing through his eyes. But he didn't press her for details, didn't ask for more than she was willing to give. Instead, he simply nodded. "You're safe here," he said again. "He won't find you. Not out here." Lena wanted to believe him. She wanted to believe that this nightmare was over, that she could finally rest. But the fear was still there, lingering in the back of her mind like a shadow. She had been running for so long she didn't know how to stop. Elias seemed to sense her unease. "You should rest," he said. "There's a bed in the next room. It's not much, but it's warm. You can sleep there tonight." She hesitated, her grip tightening on the cup. I don't want to be a burden." "You're not," he said firmly. "You're a guest. And guests are always welcome here." Lena nodded, too exhausted to argue. She allowed him to guide her to the small bedroom, where a narrow bed waited, piled high with blankets. She sank onto it gratefully, her body finally giving in to the weight of her exhaustion. Elias lingered in the doorway, watching her for a moment. "If you need anything, just call," he said. "I'll be right outside." She nodded, her eyes already closing. "Thank you," she whispered. "For everything." He didn't respond, but she thought she saw the faintest hint of a smile on his face before he closed the door. The storm raged on outside, but inside the cabin there was peace. Lena slept deeply, her body finally able to rest after days, or was it weeks, of constant fear and exhaustion. When she woke, the room was filled with the soft light of dawn, and the storm had passed. She sat up slowly, her body stiff but warm, and looked around. The cabin was quiet, the only sound the crackling of the fire in the other room. She rose and padded to the door, peering out into the main room. Elias was there, sitting by the fire with a book in his hands. He looked up as she entered, his expression softening. "How are you feeling?" he asked. "Better," she said, and for the first time in a long time it was true. "Thank you." He nodded, setting the book aside. "There's food on the stove if you're hungry." She was, and she ate gratefully, the simple meal of porridge and bread filling the emptiness in her stomach. As she ate, Elias watched her, his expression thoughtful. "What will you do now?" he asked.